Hello, everybody. This is Alex back for Sports the Nemo Way, and we're dropping a special episode for a baseball trade. Yes, our first ever baseball episode where we're going to discuss the Nolan Arenado trade. One of the best players in baseball is on the move, so we decided to come in. Even though we're a few days late, we wanted to make sure that we got all the players right because for the longest time they wouldn't tell us who was going the other direction other than some money. So we're going to discuss some baseball for you, and then we'll see you again Thursday. So let's start the discussion, guys. We got two Cardinal fans here, Doug and Drew. So I'm sure they'll give us some personal fan opinions from the Cardinals. So let's go there. Doug, how does it feel to be a Cardinal fan, bringing in one of the best players in baseball?
It feels great. I couldn't believe when I saw the deal, who we were getting, and then I thought, well, what do we have to give up? And then when I saw, it was like, there's got to be a catch. I mean, when you get one of the best players in baseball, he's signed for multiple years. He does have opt-outs, but that's okay. We're getting over $50 million from the Rockies. We're giving a decent pitcher, Gumbar. I'm not even sure how to pronounce his name, but he pitched a few innings for the Cardinals this last year. I think he was 1-1. Some started a couple, mostly out of the bullpen. And then we gave up 4 prospects, and none of the 4 are in our top 5 prospects. Matter of fact, I think they're not even in the top 7. One report.
I read that 3 of them are in the top 30. And one of them's not even in the top 30, which is as far as Baseball America goes, is your top 30 per team.
So, I mean, they're decent, but certainly not for what we're getting back. So, yeah, as a Cardinal fan, Goldschmidt at first and Nolan at third. Sounds like a pretty good infield to me.
Yeah, it does sound great. Drew, what were your thoughts?
Well, I was actually at one of my basketball games when the news came on my phone from ESPN. I looked at them like, Cardinals get Nolan, like, huh? So once I get out of the gym and get in the car, and I looked at it some more, I'm like, I'm waiting for some catch to come on here a little bit. And I'm really happy about it. We got the corners nice and solid with Nolan and Paul, so we just got to find a second baseman and shortstop. I think the Cardinals will be ready to go this year.
Well, I even as a non-Cardinal fan, well, first off, I'll say this. I was surprised that the Cardinals did this because the Cardinals have never been big spenders. You know, they even avoided signing maybe the greatest player in franchise history, Albert Pujols, because the contract was so large. So them trading for a guy with such a large contract, what was it, 8 years, $260 million, something like that for Nolan Arenado. Now, Doug mentioned they're getting $51 million sent back their direction by the Rockies. But anyway, back to what I was trying to say is when they didn't release who was going back the other direction, I was like, well, it's got to be a huge haul. Like Nolan Arenado is I don't know, top 5 player in baseball. You know, maybe 3 player in baseball. I mean, he's been very, very good. And then when these names came out, I was like, I don't even know who these guys are. Like, obviously, I'm not a Cardinal fan, so I don't know your farm system inside and out. But I was like, you know, I know who the top prospects in baseball are. You know, I've looked at the list from time to time. And then when I was like, I don't even know who these guys are, and then I read some articles, and they're like, well, this is the 10th prospect, and this is the 22nd prospect, and these are the 26th prospect. I just threw those numbers out there. I don't remember the exact rankings, but I was just like, what? Like, I'm a Red Sox fan, and so I just traded maybe the best player in baseball a year ago, and you know, you never get equal value back. But I think our haul was very superior to what the Rockies just got from the Cardinals. But I do have a little bit of information on these guys that went back. The Austin Gomber. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure either.
I'm going to butcher some of these
He
names,
hasn't
so I
pitched
apologize.
that much.
But he's a big lefty. Throws from a three-quarter arm slot. He split time between the bullpen and starting rotation, like Doug said. Due to arm concerns, though, he may end up in the pen full time. He throws a low 90s fastball and a curve and a slider, which stood out to me because curveballs don't work in Denver.
Yeah, that was one of the articles I read too. Said they're kind of concerned about his curveball at Coors Field. So
I
don't
mean,
know.
it's very weird to me that the centerpiece of a trade for a guy like Nolan Arenado is not only a guy that we can't decide whether he can start or not, but a guy that is a big time curveball guy and going to Coors. Then we have Mateo Gil, the son of a ex major leaguer, not one I recognize, but he's soon to be 22-year-old third base prospect who we last seen in 2019 in Double A, struggling to hit, striking out 31% of the time. Then we have, and this is another name I'm probably going to butcher, Elahuris Montero, another third base prospect that is already 22 years old, a big kid with a lot of raw power, but may need to move to first due to defensive and size concerns, and has also last seen struggling in Double A. I think he batted like 128, something like that. Then we have Tony Lacey, a big frame righty with control issues. He only has 2 pitches, a fastball slider mix. So unless there's some big changes made to either be able to improve his control or a third pitch, he will definitely be a bullpen guy. He was last seen in 2019, his draft year, and Rookie League. And then the last player is Jake Summers, a 10th rounder in the 19 draft, through 51 and 2/3 innings and his draft year in rookie ball with an ERA of 4.18. But he did have an impressive strikeout rate. Again, a guy that may end up in the bullpen. Even if all of these guys work out, which is highly unlikely because some of these guys are low A guys, you're looking at some relief pitchers and a third baseman and a first baseman that can't hit. It seems like a terrible return. I know somebody mentioned, whether it was Doug or Drew, mentioned like not a great return, but I just can't wrap my head around how bad the return is.
I mean, the Rockies have been doing some really bad moves for a while now. They spent a bunch of money on Ian Desmond, which was a complete failure. I think they spent like $80 million on 3 relief pitchers that had a minus WAR after like 2 years. I don't remember all their. It was like McGee. Oh goodness, I can't remember the two off the top of my head. But they've had a bunch of really bad moves in the past 4 or 5 years.
Well, I was reading a couple articles before we did this on this trade, and they said that now the Rockies' main concern is re-signing Trevor Story. Thank you, Wade. And so, one of the guys reported Trevor Story has no interest in re-signing with the Rockies.
Well, after this kind of trade, why would you? I mean, they're getting rid of everything that he'd want to play with.
For nothing. It'd be different
Yeah.
if he was getting a bunch of good players back.
Well, they're paying the Cardinals to take him.
Yeah, that too. And
And
this was supposed to be a win for small market baseball teams because Nolan Arenado, one of the best players in baseball, re-signed with a small market team for a huge contract. And everybody was like, "Oh man, the Rockies were able to pull this off." And then 2 years into it, they're trading him and paying part of his contract. So you're looking at it as in, what does this do for other small market teams? And it's definitely ruined the Rockies' reputation.
oh yeah, one of the articles I was reading said even their owner admitted that this wasn't a good deal. I mean, if
Then why sign off on it?
Right? Yeah. I mean, I don't understand it at all. I mean, I'm happy on the Cardinal side, but I do not understand it from the Rockies standpoint. There's just not enough young prospects to make up for what they're giving away.
Well, I was listening to Jeff Passan give a breakdown of the trade. Shout out to Megaphone Balls. And he said he's talked to multiple execs around the league that all expressed, I don't want to, this is not a quote, I'm paraphrasing here, all expressed how surprised they were at how little the Rockies got in return for Nolan Arenado. So it's not just us as fans who don't understand. It seems like other front offices are like, "What the hell are the Rockies doing?" I really, really am struggling to understand. But I think we beat that drum a little bit.
Well, if I was another major league team that needed a third baseman, I'd have been saying, "Man, why didn't you let me know?" I'm sure there would have been a lot of teams that needed a third baseman that would have jumped in on that deal.
I mean, like I said, I'm a Red Sox fan, and we have Rafael Devers, a really nice third baseman. And I'm disappointed we didn't. If this is all we had to give up, one of them could move to first. I'm cool with it. Like one of them could DH. We'll figure it out afterwards. We'll bring Nolan Arenado in. I'm completely cool with that. You don't pass up on one of the best players in baseball because you had to give up 5 middling prospects.
Right.
Like
basically, I mean, he's got an opt out for 21, and then they added an opt out for 22.
But they also added a year to the end.
Right, yeah, and they added a year on the end. But then the Rockies are basically paying most of the salary for the first 2 years. So there's really no gamble. I mean, if the Cardinals can't re-sign him, they still got to use him for a year or two on somebody else's dime.
I know this is a while back. Drew may not remember it, but do you remember when the Red Sox tried to trade for A-Rod after he signed his huge contract with Texas? And the league stepped in and said this trade is too one-sided because we were going to have Texas pay a big chunk of his contract.
Right, yeah.
This almost reminded me of that. I kept waiting because they said, "Oh, the trade's not approved. The trade's not approved," and it went on for like a week and a half before the trade was approved. And I kept thinking, is baseball going to step in and nix this because it's too one-sided?
What about the Players Association? What's their comment on this? I haven't seen anything, but
I haven't seen anything either. I think the Players Association is really wrapped up in negotiations right now, so maybe they don't have time to give a press release on the Nolan Arenado trade.
I can't imagine most of the players are too happy about it.
I mean, maybe, but also maybe they are because this is really the first time in baseball we've seen some big-time player flex their power. That's normally an NBA thing.
That's true. They may be happy to see that he's getting to go someplace that he wanted.
So that leads me to my next question. Is this good or bad for baseball? And I guess I'd like to hear from everybody. I don't mind. I don't care who goes next.
That's kind of tricky. I would. I mean, it seems like all 3 main sports are kind of going more towards the NBA, as in star players are forcing their way out. Deshaun Watson's doing it trying to right now. We just saw James Harden do it, but it's been a thing for a while in the NBA. I mean, it's kind of exciting when a big player, joins a different team, goes to a better team. But at the same time, you don't want, a bunch of players just all of a sudden thinking, "Oh, well, I can just force my way out as soon as I get unhappy," and then trying to leave and form super teams or whatever. That's kind of what it usually leads to when people start forcing their way out. Super teams, which can lead to mixed results. Some people love it, some people hate it. I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. I think good and bad.
Drew, what do you think?
I think it's gonna be a good thing. I think because for him leaving the Rockies, I really don't think they were doing much. So if anything, it's kind of helping out baseball. Maybe some more people want to watch with maybe not just around America, maybe in Missouri now. Maybe they'll watch a little bit more. But maybe it's not a good back to this wasn't about what you just said, but back to people not being happy. I'm sure the NL Central's not happy. Like Cubs, Pirates, Reds, Brewers, for example. I'm sure they're not happy seeing this for how little the Cardinals had to give up to get him.
I'm sure you're right. Ray, you got any thoughts?
I don't really know a whole lot about the baseball situation, but y'all talking about it's like the other sports, then I think it's pretty bad to keep giving them what they want. I mean, you can't keep Strong holding the ownership, at gunpoint so you can get out. I mean, it's your career. If you want to waste it, then waste it where you're at. Don't just get Strong holding and waste somebody's money because you want to go be whiny somewhere else.
I respect that answer. Uncle Doug?
Well, I think it's good from the player standpoint that he gets to go play where he wants. But for baseball all together and the other sports too, I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up with bigger and bigger super teams. You get, say, take basketball, for example. It was 2, and then you maybe have to have 3. Well, then if everybody gets 3, then you're going to have 4. You're going to end up with 3 or 4 teams that are the only ones that have a chance to win. And then you're going to have a whole bunch of teams that everybody knows they're not going to win a championship. They're not going to do all that much. How are those teams going to be able to pay their players? How's it going to keep the franchise going if they have no hope? So then you get things like what's going on with the tanking to get, other players. Well, if you can't keep them, when does that cycle ever end?
Well, I think it's also bad in the fact that if you get 3 or 4 teams that are loaded, baseball is already having trouble getting people to watch as far as comparing to football and basketball. And then that leaves, 20 some other franchises where they know they're not going to win, so then they're going to just kind of quit caring and probably quit watching, which is the opposite of what baseball wants right now.
Well, I think baseball has quite a few issues right now, one of which Wade just touched on. I think this touches on multiple sides of it. I think Nolan Arenado going from a bad, unseen team and the Rockies to the Cardinals, one of the most watched teams in baseball, getting one of your best players in your sport on more televisions is always a good thing. And baseball has a problem. Mike Trout has been the best player in baseball for 6-8 seasons now.
Oh, yeah.
Guys don't
For
even know what he
sure.
looks like.
Right. Because, the Angels playing on the West Coast, you don't see them that much in the Midwest.
The Angel James are
And
never
they're
on
not-
this on
and-
ESPN.
And the Angels aren't any good.
Yeah, he's only been in the playoffs once, I think,
Yeah.
and they lost in the first round.
So it's one of those things of I feel like it's positive in that part of it, getting Arenado in front of more fans. If we do have fans in the stands at some point again, Cardinal fans are loyal. They go to their games. We'll see that. He'll be on TV more. The Cardinals are good, so we'll probably see him in the playoffs. Let's think about this. Like, maybe the 5 best players in baseball. We just mentioned Mike Trout and Nolan Arenado. We also have probably Yelich, Mookie Betts. There's 4 of them anyway. But did 3 of those guys miss the playoffs last year? Like, that doesn't happen in basketball. LeBron rarely ever misses the playoffs. Durant rarely ever misses the playoffs. So we see them, and then when the playoffs roll around, they're on TV 3 times a week.
Yeah, but, you're right. Nothing wrong with what you said, but LeBron's one of 5 starters.
Absolutely.
Mike Trout's one of, you got pitchers, bullpen pitchers, position players. It's the one player isn't as effective. Is that the word I'm looking for?
They don't have as much impact on the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's kind of, or like a quarterback in the NFL.
I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that it's bad for baseball not to get these guys on TV and not to see them in the playoffs. And I believe, if we ever in the future have a, podcast about the best players in baseball history, Trout's name is probably going to come up. But when we say, well, he made the playoffs once, well, how much impact did he have? Those questions are going to come up, regardless of whether, he hit 330 with 40 home runs and 100 RBIs. We're going to say, well, he couldn't make the playoffs, which a lot of it isn't his fault. The Angels have not put a good team on the field around him very often.
Yeah.
They've had Pujols most of the time, which is on the severe backside of his career at this point.
Pretty much over.
Yeah. So anyway, I got off on kind of a tangent there, but the other part of it is, I don't really know anybody that likes the way the NBA watches their players force their way to teams all the time. Now, I'm not saying that I don't like free agency or that players shouldn't be able to move around or anything. I'm not going that far. I'm just saying, if you signed that contract, then unless you're in the last year of it, you don't have leverage. I don't have to do anything. And I think I think football has stayed more hard on that stance. We'll see what happens with Deshaun Watson. But the NBA's ownership, or whether it's Silver or the owners or whoever it is, they're just laying down the mat and let the players walk all over them.
Well, it's kind of bad. I mean, even in the NBA, even though they get a lot of people to watch and stuff, but like if you're a fan of like one specific franchise, that you can't, even if you have a great player, you pretty much know he's not going to stay there. So, like for example, like all the great players of this generation, Durant's on Team 3, LeBron's on Team 3 with two different stints in Cleveland. Kyrie's on Team 3. And that's not good. I mean,
Kawhi's on Team 3.
yeah, Kawhi, that's a good one.
Paul George.
Harden
Yeah.
and Westbrook are on Team 3.
Yeah, see, like just all that jumping around. I think you don't want that. I don't think.
As somebody that is a fan of a specific franchise and a small market franchise in Orlando, it becomes rough. And I see more and more people all the time. I mean, Wade, you're one of them, is not a fan of a franchise. You like players around the league.
Like I said, I mean, I love Vince Carter growing up. He was my favorite player. I mean, he's played for what 8 different teams. I mean, I know a lot of them. He was super old and just a bench player at the end. But I mean, after a while, it's like, who cares? I'm just gonna watch Vince Carter. And my favorite player right now is Kevin Durant, him and John Wall. But I mean, Kevin Durant's jumped around. I loved him with the Thunder. Then he went to the Warriors. I'm like, all right, he did his thing there, and then now he's with the Nets. So it's just like, so I'm just gonna watch players at this point.
It is, but I see more and more people like that all the time. I know lots of LeBron fans. They're not Cavs fans or Heat fans or Lakers fans. They're LeBron fans, and they're rooting for whatever LeBron does.
I mean, at a certain point, though, what are you gonna do if you have a favorite player and he jumps teams every 3-4 years? That's just.
I mean, I remember
logical.
when I grew up. The first player I really fell in love with was Penny Hardaway, and when Orlando traded him to Phoenix, I didn't stop rooting for Penny. I rooted for him in Phoenix while he was playing there, and I ended up getting a Penny Hardaway Phoenix Suns jersey. But I was still an Orlando Magic fan. I still am an Orlando Magic fan to this day. I don't know. It's a weird scenario. I don't want to make this into a basketball podcast. I'm just saying, most people, even people that are like fans of the player, don't like Paul George is the closest thing we've probably seen to Nolan Arenado. Paul George was in the first year of a 5-year contract when he just finished the first year of a 5-year contract when he forced his way out of OKC.
Yeah,
I mean,
Nolan Arenado has 6 years left. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's unheard of.
Well, and I think part of this goes back to I've had this discussion for years with people concerning free agency and player contracts. And they call it a player contract or a sports contract, but for a lot of years it wasn't really a contract. I mean, you were under contract to play for them, but if they decided to cut you, you weren't getting paid. So I kind of understood the players saying, you know what, you can cut me and don't have to pay me, so why should I have to honor my end of it if you're not going to honor your end of it? But now with all the guaranteed contracts, they're truly becoming contracts. And if the money is guaranteed, I think you ought to have to live up to it, just like the owner has to live up to paying you.
right. I think with baseball and basketball, that is definitely the case. I mean, you're getting not only guaranteed money, but huge sums of money. Especially in baseball, we're seeing these stars sign. Like we're talking about $260 million, and we've seen multiple $300 million contracts in baseball.
And long term.
Yeah,
for a lot of years.
6, 8, 10 years,
13 even.
Yeah, who was it to sign at $13 million?
Was it Mike Trout or was it Machado?
One of the two signed 13. You're right, though, and it's
Harper has a big one.
Harper.
Yeah, Harper.
Harper's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah,
Might be Harper with 13.
and you see that, and it's all guaranteed money. Like Pujols right now. If a team had the opportunity to cut Pujols, they would, but he's still got 2 years left.
That's the reason the Cardinals didn't sign him. I mean, the Cardinals and Albert parted on good terms, but they were honest. He just said, this is what the Angels have offered me. And the Cardinals like, we can't pay it for that long a term because it will handicap our franchise. And look what it's done to the Angels.
Yeah.
It has.
Between his salary and Trout's salary, which Trout's earning his, no doubt. And I love Albert Pujols. helps. I mean, I'm sure great community relations and everything else. He's a really good person. But those two salaries really hamper what they can do, what the team they can put around them.
When you sign a player, I mean, Pujols is one of the greatest players ever. Maybe the greatest first baseman ever. Is probably debatable. But, I mean, he had that great run in St. Louis, and then his last year in St. Louis, he was still phenomenal, but he broke his streak of batting 300, hitting 30 home runs, and 100 RBIs. I think he batted like 290 something. He might have had like 90 some RBIs or something. So you could tell already there was a little bit of a decline. Not much, but a little. And he was, low 30s at that time?
If that's, I mean, there's
Yeah.
also the discussion about players coming out of the Dominican, how old they really are.
True.
I believe he was either 30 or 31 when he
Yeah,
signed
I
that
think he
contract.
was.
I mean, what they're saying.
But then you give him, was it a 10-year deal?
10 years.
So you're signing him into his 40s. People will talk about how it's a terrible contract, which is not a good contract, but he was actually power number wise very productive, even almost into approaching 40. He's had some sneaky good seasons.
He had a 40 home run season like 2 or 3 seasons ago.
And he's eclipsed the 100 RBI mark when he's been healthy numerous times with the Angels, but it's still viewed as a terrible contract because of right now. You're paying this super old guy to almost sit on your bench now. They quit playing him a lot the past year and a half.
Well, it's because Pujols, for the longest time, was refusing to DH. He said he didn't like the DH. So that in order to play him, you had to put him in the field. Well, his foot got so bad there for a while, he couldn't move around, so he couldn't field his position.
Yeah.
Whether that has to do with age or just an injury, the foot thing is going on for seasons now.
And then now he's about 40 years old, and obviously his bat speed's gone down, and his batting average has been plummeting every year. He can still get a hold of the ball. I mean, obviously now he's pretty much done. But just like you said, just a couple years ago, he hit for almost 40 home runs or 40 home runs. He's eclipsed the 100 RBI mark numerous times. But that batting average keeps going down and down and down, and it's dragging his career batting average down. Now it's at the point where they're paying him, $30 million a year or something. I don't know what the specifics.
Some huge amount, yeah.
Yeah, and he's going to be a bench player. He's probably going to DH 80 games or something like that.
So let me ask you this. If you were Mike Trout, would you have signed the contract?
I think Trout loves Southern California. I think he likes the Angels, and I think he likes that market. He's comfortable there, and if they're going to give him that much security, I think that's what he went for.
Yeah,
I don't know what promises they made him as far as putting a contender around him. I hope they're not wasting his best years, but it sure seems like it.
I think they have wasted his best years, to be honest.
I mean, he's had a couple injuries here recently. Baseball players don't start playing at 18 and 19, 20 like we do in other sports. A lot of times guys don't get called up till they're 24, 25 years old. And then you're
Kind of stuck in that arbitration.
Yeah, you're stuck in arbitration for 4 years? You play,
Probably.
you get arbitration. So I don't know exactly how old Trout is, but I figured this contract's probably the last contract of his
I
career.
think he's a year older than me. I think it's always a year or two. So he's like 29 or 30 now. 'Cause I'm pretty sure Bryce Harper's the same age as me, and then I think Trout's like a year older or something like that.
Well, and how long did they sign Harper?
I think he was the 13-year deal. I think.
Yeah, so you figure what he signed that when he was 26, 27?
2 years ago. Yeah.
So that, again, takes him till he's like 40.
Yeah.
How many 40-year-old outfielders? I mean, at least Pujols plays first base.
True. Drew said with Machado signed a similar deal. Trout's got a similar deal. They're all going to end up being. Well, Machado plays in the National League, so he'll if he's still there, he'll have to play the field. The other two end up being DHs. But I mean, it's not a good. I mean, even besides Pujols, Miguel Cabrera signed a giant deal, and then 2 years later started plummeting again, and so that was a bad one.
All of these big contracts have failed. A-Rod's failed. Votto's failed. Cabrera's failed. I don't know who I'm forgetting.
Cool.
Pujols. All of these long, I don't care about them. I said this talking about the Red Sox a couple years ago. If we decide Mookie to 3 years, $150 million, I wouldn't have cared. But I don't want to give you $35 million for 10 years.
Yeah, the 10-year. I bet teams are going to start shying away from all that.
Well, you're going to have to, because you're going to end up with all these older players that aren't producing, making big money, and you're not going to have any way to pay your younger players.
Well, look at what free agency's been like the last 3 or 4 years. The big names get signed to these big contracts, and nobody else gets signed. We go into spring training, and all these free agents are still sitting out there with no contracts.
Right. I mean, people don't have the money.
Yeah. What's it like, Dallas Keuchel or whatever? It's a quality pitcher.
Right.
Just a year or two ago, didn't get signed until I think after the season started, and he ended up signing on like the Braves or something. And he's a quality pitcher. Like he's been good for a handful of years.
By the way, Mike Trout's 29.
Bryce Harper's 28.
I was right. Yeah. Harper the same age as me. Trout's a year older. We kind of got on a little side note there.
Yeah,
But,
Mike Trout signed a 12-year deal
what, last year or the year before?
last year, I believe. So, yeah, he signed a 12-year deal, so he'd be in his 40s when this is over.
Yeah, 40 when he.
A 40-year-old
So they're
outfielder.
just repeating the Pujols
Or,
contract.
of course, like you said, he could at least DH in the American League. But
Machado.
Harper plays for the Phillies.
Machado, yeah, Padres.
You know,
They're going to be in the field somewhere.
Well, even so far, the Stanton contract's been a disappointment.
oh, yeah.
He just can't stay healthy.
Yeah, and since he's come to the Yankees, he hasn't been near the player he was with the Marlins. Even when he's healthy, I mean, he just strikes out a ton.
His first year, he was really good, but since then, it's been up and down. That first year, I think he got like 38 home runs and 100 and some RBIs.
I think you're right. Him and was that Judge's rookie year
Yeah.
when Judge had that
Him
crazy year.
Him and Judge both have been injured nonstop since then. You know,
And Judge has never been the same player he was at his rookie season. I don't know. I think people will adjust. Anyway, like Wade said, we've kind of gotten away from Nolan Arenado being traded to the Cardinals and prospects going back. But like I said, I think we touched on that. You know, this has good and bad things for baseball in it. Maybe getting Arenado on TV more, which it may not be a terrible thing for Mike Trout. I'm sorry, Angels fans. If Mike Trout went to a team that was actually on TV, or when they're on TV, it's not, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning for the rest of the country.
I was kind of thinking after the trade, with the Cardinals getting Arenado, one, I just want to kind of get everybody's opinion. Are the Cardinals now easily the best team in the division? I think so. And is not only are they the best team, do they now have the best player in the division?
I think they're the best team in the division. But is Arenado better than Yelich?
I think overall with the offense and the defense, I'm not saying Yelich is a terrible defender or anything, but Arenado is maybe the best defensive third baseman in the game. Plus,
It's either him or the kid from the A's. What, Parker, is that his name?
or Machado. Machado's really good.
Yeah, Machado's pretty good.
But I think yes. I think they're easily the best team because I think all the other teams are going the opposite direction. The Pirates are trying to lose. The Reds I think have gotten better, but they're going to lose Trevor Bauer, who they just had last year. They might be decent. The Cubs have no pitching at all, and their stars, or who has been their stars, have all fallen off a little bit. And that leaves the Brewers, and I don't know if they're good enough to contend, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they still have Yelich. They still have Lonzo Kane. They just signed Colton Wong.
Yeah.
I don't honestly.
Do they have any pitching?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. They still have Moustakas, don't they?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
I mean, the Cardinals alone, just in the middle of that lineup, you have Goldschmidt and Arenado. Just those two by themselves. That's nasty.
It is nasty. I agree. I think they are the best team. I think it's more debatable whether they have the best player, but I just said earlier that I thought Arenado and Yelich were two of the top 4 players in baseball.
So either way,
yeah.
they either have the best or the second best player in the division and the best team.
I think they've still got a ways to go to catch Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox. I mean, some of those teams have really, but at least they're moving in the right direction. Whereas teams like the Cubs seem like they're going the other direction.
They got rid of,
Like they're shedding talent.
yeah, there are talks of them trading Chris Bryant. They got rid of Yu Darvish. Their bullpens sucked for a few years.
John Lester left.
John Lester left. I mean, their starting pitching has been up and down for a few years anyway. And then you take out Darvish and Lester, that leaves Hendricks
Hendricks
is their only real quality starter, I think, unless I'm forgetting someone.
I don't know, but it seems like there's a lot of owners or GMs or whatever they are panicking around baseball about money.
Yeah. The Pirates, they're really unloading everybody.
Well, and that's the thing with the Pirates. They've been doing this for years. When does it stop?
Yeah, they had that run with McCutcheon
Yeah.
and they had a few other really good players. Since then, they haven't really done anything. I don't think they've even tried to really make any big moves, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, every couple of years they produce an all-star from their
Farm system.
farm system. Thank you. And then a couple years after they make too much in arbitration, they send them somewhere.
Yeah. They let them go.
I mean, we've seen it over the. They even traded McCutcheon 2 years after his MVP season,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and then they had three like all-star outfielders at the same time. McCutcheon, I can't remember the
They
other.
had Marte for a while.
Yep, Starling Marte, good call there, Willard. And they traded him to the Giants or the
Diamondbacks?
The D-backs, yeah. And they had somebody else, and they also had the Harris kid that played second base. They got rid of him.
They had a young.
Was there
Liriano,
some
didn't
guy
they?
named like Blanco or something for the Pirates?
I think there was a guy named. I don't know if he's an outfielder, but didn't they have a big first baseman that hit home runs for a while too?
Yeah,
the
they
same
did. They had
time.
a big first baseman, had a couple big seasons, home run wise.
They had that run where they made the playoffs 2-3 years in a row.
Yeah.
I think they lost like in the first round every year.
Don't they have like a Bell now? Isn't there like a Bell that plays there? It's
Maybe that's
young
what we're
and
thinking
good.
of.
But anyway, yeah, you're right. Enough about it. The Pirates just repeatedly sell off talent, and yes, they're in a smaller market, but they're in Pittsburgh. It's not like other franchises in
Well,
other
yeah.
sports aren't good there.
Well, like Wade was saying earlier when we were talking, look at Tampa Bay. They don't have a huge salary, but they win. So small markets, and you don't have to break the bank to win if you do it wisely.
Yeah, the Rays they have their certain players they bring into the farm system that are good quality players. They always seem to have good pitching, which seems to be their main thing in their farm system. And then they bring in 3 or 4 new guys, it seems like a year, that have a specific role they're really good at, but they don't have to spend a bunch of money on them. Like, a left-handed reliever that helps them down the stretch, or they bring in, they usually seem to bring in really good defensive guys, or guys that, get a lot of walks and get on base a lot, but maybe not put up the numbers that, warrant a $30 million a year contract, but they might have an on-base percentage of, really high and play good defense, and stuff like that leads to success.
Well, they have a good way of getting prospects. If they lose somebody, they're going to get decent prospects back. And they, like you say, they always seem to have guys coming up from the farm system that are going to do the job. But they space in some more recognizable or more famous players and pay certain ones.
But when they do pay guys like free agents, it's only on 1-year deals.
Yeah, it's
Right, yeah. They
It
don't
might
do
be
the
for
long.
15, 17 million, but it's
Right.
1 year.
Even that much money is rare for the Rays, I feel like, but it is usually short deals. Speaking
But-
about the Rays, didn't they just get rid of Blake Snell too?
Yes, they traded him to the
Like
Padres.
him and Darvish went to the same place.
Yes, they both went to the Padres.
Yeah, the Padres, they're starting to spend some money.
Well, they have some good young players.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
So now
Tatis
Tatis,
Jr.?
yeah.
Tatis is really good.
He's awesome.
Yeah, it was weird a couple of years ago. Maybe it was longer ago than that now. When they gave Hosmer that big contract, and everybody was like, first off, what's Hosmer doing? But second off, what are the Padres doing giving Hosmer, who's a nice player, that big contract? But they're like the worst team in baseball. And then all of a sudden, they've signed like 4 other players to huge contracts, and they've brought up 2 or 3 guys out of their farm system that are just absolute studs, like Tatis Jr. And now the Padres are looking like contenders for the World Series.
Yeah. I mean, they've really put together a nice team.
Again, we kind of went off on a tangent there, but unless somebody has any other points on Nolan Arenado, I think we can wrap up and give our closing thoughts on the Arenado trade.
I'm good with closing statements.
Go ahead, Drew.
As a Cardinals fan, I think it was a great trade for us, not giving up very much, and them giving us $50 million back in return. So I think Cardinals are looking pretty good. If they don't have the best player in the division, they definitely have the second best. They're probably looking at us the favorites to win the Central. So I'm looking forward to the season.
Kind of piggyback on that. It's obviously a great trade for the Cardinals. The Rockies clearly don't know what the fuck they're doing. But I mean, yeah, the Cardinals are looking good. I think if they kind of shore up a couple other spots on the team, they could be a pretty legit team. Like I said, I think barring injuries or something like that, I think they're pretty close to a lock to win the division. I think they have quite a bit of talent. And Nolan Arenado is young enough. I think he can produce quite a bit for quite a while. I actually read an interesting stat the other day that as far as analytic-wise, him and Scott Rowland almost have some identical analytical numbers when they both came to the Cardinals. And when Rowland came to the Cardinals, it led to a lot of success because they, had him and Goulds in the middle of the order, and they had the two, third and first, covered. And now the Cardinals are kind of trying to repeat that, I think, with Goldschmidt and Arenado.
It's a fair point. Uncle Doug, you got anything?
Yeah, again, as like Drew said, as a Cardinal fan, I'm thrilled with the deal. I do feel for the Rockies fans, if I was a Rocky fan, I would be wondering where my franchise is going and what the plan is. Hopefully they have a plan and that they can keep their other players and move forward with some young guys. And I hope that the Cardinals can take advantage of this opportunity while they've got Goldschmidt and Arenado. And we've got some young guys coming up. Hopefully the pitching holds up and they can make a run and make it worthwhile.
Ray?
I think the only thing I have to say is maybe they need to get a couple of doctors in Colorado to check for mental health issues. But other than that, way to go, Cardinals, sniping in there.
I think this is a great trade from a Cardinals perspective and a what the fuck move from the Rockies. I guess Dodgers fans are maybe happy that he's not in the division anymore. Maybe that's a positive for the West Coast. I just feel like that baseball has become so extreme with the haves and the have-nots, and I'm not sure what that's going to do to baseball. I think that's what's the opposite of that is what's kept football so interesting. Is that every year it seems like a team that sucked is now good. We just don't see that in baseball. And as a big baseball fan, maybe the biggest baseball fan in this room, like it bothers me that baseball seems to be going the wrong direction. So hopefully the positive side of this being Arenado getting on TV and the playoffs and stuff like that can be helpful and maybe a blueprint for some more success. But to be honest, I'm not hopeful. But that's all I got. We appreciate you tuning in and listening to our trade breakdown. And don't forget to tune in next Thursday for our new episode. Thanks.